good afternoon. I hope that you all enjoyed your virtual lunch. Beauty of these online conferences, you've got to go and get your own lunch. Not quite the same as coming to sunny Devon, where we had hoped to hold the EdTech Festival. It was supposed to be a nice marquee, live band, opportunity to go and visit some schools, meet some children. But we are on the last afternoon of the EdTech Festival. I think it's been a jam-packed full day, some great keynotes, good panel discussion, and we have got a closing keynote by a principal from Australia who works for Microsoft now, Mark Sparvel. He's going to wrap up the two-day EdTech Festival for us. But I'm delighted to have with us for this next session, looking at creating an EdTech strategy, and that's been a recurring theme. It's about the new normal. We know that we are coming back with hopefully all children in September, but there's going to be some changes. We're not just going back to how it was. We've really got to have a clear vision, strategy of how we're going to use the technology to ensure the quality of education is going to be there. And Jen King works for Microsoft. She's worked in the States, she's in the UK, and has a real breadth of experience and knowledge around, using technology effectively in the classroom. So I'm delighted to introduce Jen, and welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's wonderful to be here. Now I'm feeling a bit sad. I know what I'm missing now, a marquee and a live band, but next year we'll have it, and I'll get some scones with cream, hopefully. But now you get the pleasure of my company from my house, and thank you all so much for joining this session about creating an EdTech strategy to lead through challenging times. And just generally, an EdTech strategy is useful if it's a challenging time or not. It's so important to prepare our students for the future. As Jonathan said, I am the UK Schools Engagement Lead for Microsoft. I'm an educator myself. I have taught most of my teaching career in the UK, spent some time as the Director of Education for 21st Century Job Skills and Employability at Microsoft in Seattle. And I have come back to the UK, that I call my home, to really inspire teachers and to help school leaders with digital transformation. And so that is what this talk will be about.
Jen, if I just jump in there for everybody, just before you begin your session, there's a live Q&A. I'm going to post in there, but if you've got questions for Jen, please keep them coming in, and then partway through or at the end, we're going to answer or ask Jen to answer those questions. So you can see her PowerPoint on the screen, and over to you, Jen.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, so as I have introduced myself, but I do hope that you'll follow me on Twitter at @JenKing_, or you can find me at LinkedIn at Jennifer King MED. It'll be great to connect with you, and I can help support your schools in any way that I can. So our world is changing. We know this. We know that there's a lot of changes that are afoot, but we also know that we're not exactly sure what that change is going to mean. That advances in technology are creating new knowledge, new experiences, and really the world that our students are experiencing is so different than our world that we're experiencing. And we have to prepare for that constant change. And the best way to model that change for our students is to do it ourselves, to really have that growth mindset. We are currently in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. We have had the steam revolution that happened in the 1780s. We had electricity, where we had mass production, the telephone, light bulb, etc. Most recently, we had the electronics in the 1970s, where the company I work for was born. We have gone through all of these revolutions, and currently we're in what's called the digital and AI revolution, where really there's a blurred line between digital and analog, what's real, what's augmented, and it's really changing the way we interact with technology altogether. But the interesting thing about industrial revolutions is that governments and systems need to adapt to those revolutions that are generally caused by commerce and invention, rather than by the government or systems of power in place. And so the education systems have to change in response to these revolutions that we're going through. But the education system hasn't really had a full response yet to the electronic revolution. We're still playing catch up as we go through. But pretty soon, the students that enter the workforce in 2030 are really going to need a significant shift in the way that they are taught and the way that they experience their education to make sure that they're prepared for the future. We know that 47% of current jobs are expected to be taken over by machines in the next 2 decades. That's nearly 50% of all current roles will be obsolete. But that doesn't mean that 50% of us will be out of work. It means that 50% of us need to retrain. We need to be looking for what's next down the line. It also means that the skill sets that we're teaching our students now, half of them will be irrelevant. We also know that 65,000 new IT jobs by 2024 will be in cloud-related technology fields. This means having something to do with the internet. I recently had a new plumbing system put in my house and a new electrical system on a side, and you would think the electrician was a software program engineer in the way that he was able to hook up all of our lights to the internet. Understanding that IoT infrastructure was unbelievable. And that's really the future for every one of our students. Only 33% of the world's demand for employees with technology skills is being met. That means we have huge potential here to grow. And in less than a decade, 77% of all jobs will require tech skills, and probably even more. So, adapting to the future. In order to confront the rapidly evolving world around us, you need to have a system in place to adapt with the changes. And transformation starts with leaders. So, what can leaders do in order to start that transformation? They can think big, but start small. Just take your little steps to begin with. We don't have to overhaul the school overnight, but we do need to have large vision. Build from the inside out. Think about your staff first. Think about your parents. Think about your students. Start inside and then work outwards with your systems. Build a culture of learning. Make sure that everyone has that growth mindset built into everything that you do. We won't be perfect from the beginning. Well, we'll never be perfect. Things are going to go wrong, and it's okay. And in fact, that's exactly what we need to be modeling for our students. We need to empower teachers and students. We need to leverage process. We have to make sure we're innovating, not just automating. We're not just throwing in systems that will, quote unquote, make things easier, but rather things that make things better. We also need to ensure the entire community is there, making sure that you bring the parents along with you. Education transformation matters because it's about customizing the educational process to have personalized learning. But most importantly, it enhances equity as well as equality in learning outcomes. And we all know that is what we need more than anything right now, is equity and equality in education. Technology-based innovations reshape the environments in which schools operate. This means that the school itself looks different. The way the school feels different. It's the way the students act is different. Technology will touch every element of the school. It's not just about having an app. It's not just about having a website. This is about every aspect for every corner of your school being changed. We're preparing students for the future. We're empowering students through personalized learning. One of the things that we have noticed during this lockdown period was the ability to slow down a little bit. Our ability to think about the needs of each one of our students. We were able to really focus on what they needed and tailor our content directly from them. There were so many more communications between parents and teachers. Parents were so much more involved in their students' learning. Now, of course, this was not across the board. That was not this is a generalized statement, not 100%. But for those students who had more parental involvement, who had more personalization, the experience of having remote learning was actually a really positive one. We need to also develop skills for students' future success. Having something that saves your teacher's time is excellent, but having a digital platform that prepares your students in the process for the world of work is even better. So what are the possibilities of transformation? What does that look like? As I said, it reaches every single aspect of the school, from the environment, what the classrooms look like, ensuring that the spaces are flexible, that they motivate students, they engage students, that education is not limited by time or place. 24/7 learning. That's what our students exist in. Naturally, students are curious. Naturally, students are just sponges. They learn through play. So as educators, we need to think about, how is our education unlimited by time or place? Making sure that it's personalized, it's enjoyable. And you usually do that by engaging students in deeper learning, giving them experiences that enrich that amazing curriculum and that great teaching and learning that teachers do every day. And that really happens through ensuring that our staff embrace a growth mindset, supporting staff in their professional development and supporting them when things don't always go right. And being there to say, we're happy that you took the risk, we're happy that you tried, and now we can work together to make it even better. And of course, data-driven, proactive interventions, using data, making sure that we have the data we need, we're using the right dashboards, and we're making decisions based on those great insights we get. There's a fantastic white paper that came out that I'm sure Mark Sparvel will be talking about in his closing keynote, but it's called Education Reimagined. And it was built, it was created with a group, New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, and they created this white paper that really is about what does education look like after COVID, or still during COVID, but after the lockdown period. And the answer is really blended learning, that we're not going to be able to go back to the way it was. We're going to have to keep moving forward. And so it talks about the 3 different phases that we have gone through. We went through the distress. Nothing looks the same. We all had to learn how it was going to work. We put in new processes in place. And then we hit a transition period where we were now thinking, what's going to happen next? How do we move forward? How do we make this sustainable? And then phase 3, reimagining. We have an amazing opportunity right now to reimagine what school looks like, what education looks like. And so we have to have some parameters around that reimagination. We have to be mindful of well-being. We have to make sure that we're learning from the lessons that happened. We need to make sure that we have safety at the forefront at all times. We're including operations, and that the learning agenda is the first thing we need to think about, ensuring student attainment. In this white paper, it goes over these 6 questions. You know, how do we ensure quality? What kind of learning is needed for the current and future complexity? These are all excellent questions, and I really hope you'll check out this white paper and read it when you have some time. So let's have a deeper dive into what does it mean to have flexible spaces that inspire learning. So flexible spaces allow for mobile furniture, allow for students to move around freely. This means that students are not sitting in rows. You don't have a desk at a front. I'm sure I'm just preaching to the choir here on that idea of not having teacher up front and students in rows. We need to allow students to move freely, to collaborate, to be able to have that activity as part of their space, to really allow them to collaborate and communicate. Thinking education can be unlimited. Well, we've all just experienced this. We all have just seen how it works firsthand. What happens when we aren't limited by going to and we know there were a ton of challenges around that. We know that technology made it easier, but we also knew that in order to really have education that's unlimited by time or place, you needed to have a digitally literate community. Not just teachers, but your students needed to know how to access the technology and parents needed to know how to support it. It meant that teachers needed to define when were they on, when were they off. They needed to understand how they were going to be responding to students. But it also allowed teachers and students to have a more casual conversation around their learning. And it meant that learning could come into their environment and their whole day. So having students engaged in deeper learning means that you're investigating complex questions, problems, and challenges. The class of 2030 is going to be facing some of the biggest challenges in the world. We're going to be looking at food scarcity. We're going to be looking at climate change. I don't think COVID will be the last pandemic we may face. And so we have to have our children understand that problems are complex, that there are challenges out there that have to be worked on together collaboratively, and that they don't exist within a single subject, that it's also interdisciplinary. So why not tap into the wonderful resources we have by gamification, using Minecraft, virtual technology, HoloLens, bringing in augmented reality. Using all of these things can help students look at a problem literally through 3D. Using that type of technology for deeper learning to solve complex problems that really impact a student's life, that means a lot to them, that's how you get personalized, enjoyable learning. Students collaborating with teachers to set their own learning goals and thinking about their own measures of success. Being able to use technology to help each individual student track where they are at on their own. Well, in a class of 32, we have to ensure that all of those students move together at the same time. But through the use of technology, we're able to differentiate for each one of those 32 students. Even as we move forward, we can understand where they're at against the metrics. And we want to make sure that teachers embrace a growth mindset. Using team teaching, peer review, and feedback, utilizing OneNote for professional learning communities, our staff OneNotes, allowing teachers to have conversations and group together to collaborate on curriculum, interdisciplinary projects. All of these things allow teachers to learn from one another, having digital champions in a school that are able to coach those that are less confident with technology. This proves teachers having a growth mindset. We know that teachers have the best interest of their students at heart. We know that we have to prepare our students for the 21st century. We just need to offer our teachers a model for how they can do that within their comfort zone. And of course, the data-driven proactive interventions. There are so many tools out there to be able to get easy reporting, Power BI dashboards, etc., to use great data to make timely decisions. And some of these decisions are as important as child protection. So it's important to have the data. Without the technology, without getting that data, you won't be able to see the trends. So we know the school leaders have their top objectives within your school day. You know that you need to drive stronger learning outcomes, manage student behaviors, improve your staff's performance, address parental concerns, manage the budget. You need to hire and retain staff. I know so many of us are going through that process right now. Defining the curriculum, particularly with Ofsted's changes, this curriculum is becoming more and more important. Engaging our communities. Schools are more than schools. Schools are a hub of the community, and we have learned that more than ever during COVID. Preparing students for university, preparing them for their careers, and keeping students safe. But all of those come with challenges. We know that there is a shortage of long-term planning, that we're often just trying to get through the school year. But that means because we don't necessarily always have a roadmap to help us get there. There's limited access to technology. There isn't enough time for professional development. There's lack of tech readiness at the school. You're not sure how to get the readiness, the lack of structure and time to coach and train and support tech adoption. You may have parents who are resistant, or there's insufficient resources to support that vision and roadmap. And so this is where the education transformation framework comes in. It's a really solid framework that's step-by-step to help you on your digital transformation. We know that we have to prepare our students for the 21st century. We know that we have to increase our student outcomes, we have to address our needs, and the education transformation framework helps you do that in a straightforward step-by-step manner. The ETF, as it's referred to, is used by schools all over the world, and it's based on OECD principles. It has leadership policy, modern teaching and learning, a technology blueprint, and intelligent environments. The framework touches every single part of your school. Within each of those shapes, we have under leadership and policy, we have vision for change, strategic planning and quality assurance, partnerships and local capacity building, and inclusion and accessibility. This is where we're really focusing on what is the SLT doing to drive their community, to drive their change, and how are they driving that strategic plan for the future. In the purple, we have modern teaching and learning. This is all about what's happening in the classroom. How are we investing in teacher professional development? How do we make sure that students are having a personalized learning experience, focusing on their well-being, that immersive deep learning is happening, and that you have a robust curriculum with assessment. The technology blueprint addresses the underbelly of all of those two things, which is how does the tech work? What is your operational and IT management plan? What collaborative learning platform are you using? How does that give you data? How do you drive insights with that data? And what are the devices you're using? And then you have your intelligent environments, thinking across your whole school. What about your facilities management? How can you have more efficiencies? Smart and integrated security, sustainable and responsible design, and purpose-driven accessible learning spaces. So each part of the framework addresses every part of the school. Leadership and policy is about embracing a culture of exchange with flexible policies and processes that enable data-driven decisions and delivers an autonomous teaching and learning environment for students and educators. The leadership and policy one is really a mini leadership course. How can you drive this digital transformation while bringing everyone on board? Intelligent environments, creative, collaborative, flexible learning spaces that are safe, technology blueprint, having a reliable, responsive, data-driven tech environment that empowers leaders, educators, and learners to achieve every day in the classroom. Modern teaching and learning. Our teachers are some of the best teachers in the world. We want to make sure that they have all of the resources they need and help them do their job better, easier, and faster, while also giving a tailored educational experience for their students, making everyone more engaged and happier. So how do we go about initiating this change? There is so much in the ETF, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So we just start a little bit at the top, thinking about how do you initiate change? Well, you could do it through a very planned approach, or perhaps ad hoc. It could be driven by a great vision that you have of the future, or you could be defined a lot by compliance or by immediate needs or guidelines. And what works? Is it working from the bottom upwards, or is it from top down, the SLT telling the staff what to do? Is it really working from the external pressures like your councils or the DFE or other government organizations around you pressuring? Or is it from an inside? Is it from feedback from parents and students and teachers? Is it about being proactive, about creating something new that never existed before? Or is it about being reactive, where something is happening to us via our environment and we have to switch? And so as you can see from this, there's all different types of longevity, depth of the change, or the scale of the change, depending on which one of those that you pick, whether it's a planned top-down approach, which means that you might have long-term longevity and it might be widespread scale, but really the depth of it is just cosmetic. And so ultimately what you're looking for is a little bit of it all. You want to have a collaborative vision. A collaborative vision means that you're working with your staff, your students, your teachers, your parents, together to create that vision, creating that plan, and making sure that the compliance and your context is baked into that. You want to make sure that you're both leading from the front, but bringing your staff along so that you have a fundamental depth to your change, and that scale is widespread. We know that in that change adoption, we have innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. We want to make sure that when we're doing our change adoption, that we are following this curve, but we don't forget the late majority and the laggards. That's where you get that widespread, deep fundamental change coming. So the success factor in having good change that goes with your digital transformation is leader and educator professional development, leadership and policy, a connected community, and having that technology blueprint. So as you've listened to the talk, you may have thought, gosh, I wonder where I am on that ETF journey. I wonder if we have a good technology blueprint. I wonder if the vision is appropriate. Well, you can find out by taking our assessment at aka.ms/edujourney. It'll take you to the web page. You click on leadership. It will take you to an assessment where you can run through all the different elements within the ETF and find out where your school is at on the journey. And then you're able to reach out for the additional resources. Perhaps you'd like to go to the Microsoft Educator Center, which is at education.microsoft.com. There are lots of courses designed specifically for leaders on this center. You can earn your certified Microsoft Innovative Educator badge while you're at it, but I really recommend the course called Leading Schools 2030. This course is based on another white paper that was created about what the future looks like for staff and students in 2030. So it's a fantastic overview of what we need to be looking at to prepare for the future. If you're interested in Office 365 or you have it, but you want to get to know how you can work it better in that technology blueprint, but also for teaching and learning, then use the Getting Started with Office 365 for Leadership course. And then remote learning for school leaders. While some of us might be coming out the other side of remote learning, we are going into probably a blended learning model. And so it's a good idea, if you haven't already, to check out remote learning for school leaders. And you have an opportunity to create a school-wide professional development plan on the Microsoft Educator Center. It doesn't require you to go anywhere. It's always on. The courses are really well designed and user-friendly. And it's a great way to easily skill up your teachers. You can also attend a Leadership Inspire Day. If you go to aka.ms/Education Inspire Days. The Inspire Days are hands-on. You'll be able to join a Teams environment where you'll be with a few other schools, or perhaps you can sign up your whole SLT team. And it's a great way to get a feel for the best practice for digital transformation. It's small group. We have limited spaces in each of them to ensure that the content is tailored for you and that you can have really in-depth discussions. And it's leader focused. It's specifically for leaders like yourselves to look at the issues that matter the most to you. And we have our Microsoft Showcase School program. If you're well on your way on the ETF, you can apply to become a Microsoft Showcase School. If you are just getting started, you may like to apply to become what's called a Microsoft Incubator School. So you can apply for that at aka/MIE nomination. You can take an assessment. You are able to have a rubric that lets you know whether you are in the emerging or leading or advanced categories on the rubric. If you are in leading or advanced, then you qualify to become a Showcase School in these different categories. We would love to have you join us, join the community. You get a lot out of it. Cornerstone happens to be a Showcase School as well. And it's a really great way to keep up to date with the product teams, but also a really good way to connect to other top schools in the UK. And you're part of a global community of amazing educators all over the world. You get support directly from Microsoft. You get recognition for how much effort you have put in for your amazing digital strategy. You get to have impact on a local, regional, national level, and you get to be part of a community. So I really invite you to come and join our Showcase Schools program. Thank you so much for listening to my talk today. And with that, I will answer some questions.
Thank you so much, Jen, for such a detailed and inspiring talk about the importance of a strategy and how you might begin to build one. Now, we have a question. We don't have any questions yet. We've got a post which is nice, which is coming from somebody that says great points. So some good feedback there from one of the audience, but I'm just wondering if there's anyone out there that would like to post a question that we can pose to Jen, having just enjoyed her input. So I'm just wondering, we just wait to see if anyone pings a question. Do be bold. So there we go. I'll just send your picture live there, Jen. Well, you know, whilst we wait for some questions to come in, maybe I'll ask you a question just to get us going. So just thinking about some of the feedback I've been receiving, where maybe people on an EdTech conference like this, attending these sessions, are quite keen to see that transformational change, but maybe their school, you referred to what the leaders want, but getting that change in the mindset of the whole organisation. How can you do that from within? How can you bring about that change if you find that there's a reticence to bring in that change in your organisation? Any hints and tips on bringing in that strategy?
Well, it's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On how to really reach the late adopters and the laggers within the change, because it's always easy to get your innovators in your school behind you and get that real excitement. But you need to make sure you're getting that critical mass of excitement. And so probably my two points that are good to try. The first one is make sure you have a lot of consultation. Make sure you're getting a lot of voice from your community to help them feel part of the strategy, part of that change. Letting them voice their opinions and their concerns and help build that into your strategy and the way you're thinking, because you never know when those eureka moments where they'll come from, and also it's really important to accept help from your community around you as well. You may have people within your community you didn't even know that will be able to support a lot of this change. And then the second one is to identify your champions that you have for this change within your staff. You'll want a diverse group of people. You'll want to have a teacher who perhaps has gone through themselves a feeling of being less confident with technology, who has moved through that space, who has become confident with technology. They're a fantastic champion to have because of that authentic story that they have to tell, as well as having a person who is very confident with technology, feels like they can learn quite quickly. You'll want a champion who is willing to try anything, but maybe doesn't know how it works, and they just want to try it out, and they're a great collaborator. There's someone who is willing to collaborate with their students to work things through. It's also a great idea to have students involved, having student champions who are able to train staff and who are on hand to fix tech problems, because having that level of support helps teachers feel more comfortable with perhaps making a mistake in front of their class. And so those would be my two suggestions, is have a lot of voice from your community, a lot of consultation, and then having a good diverse set of champions that can start working with your late adopters.
Thanks, Jen. That's great. I certainly know from our experience and all of working as a showcase school, as a training academy, and now a demonstrator school, where we've been working with primaries and secondaries. And I know that where schools have brought about that change, they've just done that. One of the biggest investments they've made has not been just in training of staff, but it's been in that coaching and mentoring, and that change in terms of the vision and the culture of the place. It's taking the people with you, which is a lot more than simply laying on some CPD, and having a drive team. And I think one of the most powerful voices on the drive team is the one you said, is that if I say they were the cynics, but they've seen the power of the transformation, and getting those people who often are more cynical because they're more apprehensive. And if they're apprehensive about something, they need it to see it happen. And when they do, they become the most powerful voice in the group. We've got a few questions that have come in, and we're going to have to go quick because we've got another session coming up and we're going to jump on. So what's an incubator school compared to a showcase?
Okay, so on the ETF, you have a rubric, and we have, and I'm forgetting the third category. It's emerging, and then there's another one, and then there's advancing and leading. And if you fall into the first two categories on your ETF assessment, then this means you're an incubator school and you're someone who is dedicated to the ETF, you're working towards it, but you're not quite there yet. You're on your journey. Microsoft absolutely recognizes that schools that are on their journey need support, and we want to help mentor that support with our showcase schools who fall into the upper two categories on the rubric. And they're really there to help the incubator schools come up into the showcase school program. But the showcase school program is not evergreen. You have to constantly be proving your dedication to the ETF into digital transformation each year to stay in the program.
Thanks, Jen. And the next question, are there any schools who are both Google certified or Microsoft Showcase, or is it one or the other? Can you be both?
Well, one of the criteria of being a Microsoft Showcase school is that 90% of your staff and students use one of the platforms, and that would be the Microsoft platform on its own, so singularly. So I would say that you're probably going to be one or the other in order to truly get the most out of the functionality of either platform.
Lovely, thank you. And we've got, if we are predominantly iPad school, does this discount us from being a Microsoft school, even though there are Office apps on the iPads, which we use a lot?
No, not necessarily. We do have a Windows 10 requirement in the Showcase school, but that's one of many other criteria to meet. And so I think it's important to look at your overall strategy. If you're using Office 365 and Teams and you have your students provisioned on it, then we can sort of have that discussion as it comes, but it is not a limiting factor.
Lovely. And then we've got, are there any sources of information, links to look into student training ideas programs, so upskilling students?
Yes, we have it's Microsoft.com/digital skills is where you want to go for student training, or to Microsoft.com/learn. Both of those are excellent sources for students to learn about digital skills all the way from STEAM and STEM up through computer science, data science, getting into some higher certifications.
Lovely. And then I think a couple of quickies. Can you say a bit more about the flexible spaces and what these might look like in a primary school, not in COVID times? But I'm just wondering, because that could be a long question and we're 2 minutes off the next session. It's a guy called Ken. Ken, I wonder if you could email me that question, and I just wonder if I were to share with you my details. I'm just going to send them live on this call now. And if you pinged me an email, you could, it's jonathan.bishop@tcat.education. You can see it on your screen now. My Twitter handle is @Broadclist. If you get in touch, I could pass that on to Jen. I hope you wouldn't mind just picking that point up around flexible working spaces. And certainly we are in the Department for Education free school program. We've opened one new school and we're building a second. And we have been involved in trying to create flexible spaces, but I know that there's a wealth of information as part of building new schools that Microsoft have been involved in around the world. So I'm sure Jen could maybe pick that up. Is that all right, Jen?
Yes, absolutely, no problem.
And then finally, last question, what is your Twitter handle?
It is Jen King _, and it'll be great to connect with you all on Twitter.
Lovely. So thank you once again. I mean, the feedback already is great online for such a comprehensive and inspiring talk. Thank you, Jen, for your time and being present at the EdTech Festival. As always, it's a pleasure working with you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.